rain, heavy blows, bloody eyes, sweaty clothes.
When Death Stranding was first unveiled years ago, its unusual design left us all with questions that would persist with each new trailer. As Kojima Productions' first independent release, it's certainly clear from its marketing cycle that the team was focused on upending traditional AAA expectations. Unlike most games today, you see, where it's immediately clear what you're in for long before you even pick up a controller, Death Stranding is an enigma. And that's a huge part of its appeal. I won't spoil much here in this video, but suffice to say, Death Stranding is a unique experience that brings back the magic of discovery that I haven't felt in years. It's a fascinating production. Beyond the experience itself, however, Kojima's teams have long been known for pushing technical and presentation boundaries, and Death Stranding is no exception. This is perhaps one of the most visually striking games of the generation, a new benchmark for the medium. This dark, isolated world adopts a style that leaves a mark long after you've finished playing. Today then, we're exploring the visual splendor on display in Death Stranding, breaking down elements from the smallest stone to the largest mountain and beyond. Due to restrictions on length, however, we cannot possibly discuss everything in just one video, thus today's presentation will serve as part 1 of a larger series, which means we're focusing on the PlayStation 4 Pro version and its remarkable visuals. So join me as we dive into the mysterious and beautiful world of Death Stranding. When Kojima Productions started work on what would become Death Stranding, the team was given the opportunity to select from Sony's stable of tools and technology. After wandering the globe, it was decided that the new game would be developed using Guerrilla Games' superb Decima engine, the same technology which powered its own games such as Horizon Zero Dawn. As an open-world style game with a focus on cinematics, Decima feels like a perfect fit for Death Stranding. Many of the key technical and visual features supported by Decima are utilized to great effect, while the few shortcomings we mentioned in our analysis of Horizon, such as water rendering, have been greatly enhanced. And while the engine was designed to support Guerrilla's own efforts, this is the second game to have been developed outside the company using it, the first being Until Dawn. Based on the information gleaned during our visit to Guerrilla HQ, it's clear that the toolset is efficient and focused on a smooth workflow, enabling the creators to more quickly build unique gameplay systems and concepts. Death Stranding demonstrates its effectiveness in spades and is a remarkable showpiece for both the engine and the PlayStation 4 hardware. Like Horizon before it, Death Stranding delivers excellent image quality utilizing checkerboard rendering. Pixel counts suggest the same 2160p resolution. This combines with excellent texture filtering and temporal stability to produce a very filmic image that at times looks borderline pre-rendered, even though nearly everything is 100% real-time. Then there's the HDR implementation, which I feel is top tier. In fact, it's something that we may feature in a future video for those curious. The difference between highlights and darker regions of the screen are beautifully realized, and this greatly enhances the game's overall atmosphere. If you have access to an HDR display, it's certainly a showpiece title. But what impresses me the most about Death Stranding is the blend between small details and the large sense of scale on offer. It doesn't feel as if the minutiae has been sacrificed in pursuit of a large world. Well, at least most of the time. But while this world is little more than a deserted husk to explore, there is life to be found in its characters, and this is perhaps one of the most impressive elements which we will discuss today. Since its inception, Kojima has focused heavily on its star-studded cast, including the likes of Norman Reedus, Mads Mikkelsen, and Lea Seydoux, among many others, so it's no surprise that character rendering is a huge focus. Horizon Zero Dawn was already known for its tremendously detailed character models, but Death Stranding is truly a step above. The likeness of each cast member has been perfectly captured and rendered in-game. A rig of cameras is used to create the data from which the model was created, and detail is then refined from there. When looking closely at the models then, the first thing that really stands out is the quality of the eye rendering. This is where virtual models often fall flat, but the eye material and the way in which light penetrates the outer layer feels remarkably realistic. Sequences such as this are eerily accurate, as if you're looking someone directly in the eyes. The area around the eyes then follows suit with superbly detailed eyelashes and skin. We've seen a lot of progress from many games this generation, but this is one of those rare moments where you really feel as if you're looking at a real human face during cutscenes. Skin shading is similarly impressive, with realistic subsurface scattering present as light plays off the surface. Multiple texture layers are used to simulate skin folds as characters move about, while small hairs can be observed across the surface, glistening in the light. Even things such as an allergic reaction and goosebumps are represented visually. Again, many other recent games do an excellent job with skin and face rendering, but I feel that Death Stranding is truly a step above. Hair itself is also beautifully rendered and mostly devoid of visible artifacts. And this is true across all characters, each with different lengths and types of hair. From the long blonde hair such as this, to Sam's stringy medium-length hair, or even what you can make out of the wonderfully named Die Hard man's hair. It all looks very realistic for each character. Even Norman Reedus' facial hair shows a difference between dark and graying whiskers. Each of these elements work in tandem to create highly convincing and beautifully rendered faces across the game, which is then combined with performance capture across major scenes, leading to a very realistic and cinematic result. Kojima's games have always pushed the boundaries of virtual cinema. These real-time cutscenes from Metal Gear Solid 2, released all the way back in the year 2001, still hold up brilliantly, I feel. It was way ahead of any other game on the market. Since then, many other studios have made huge leaps over the past 2 decades. But as I had hoped, the cutscenes featured in Death Stranding are more ambitious than most and recreate that same feeling I remember from experience in Metal Gear Solid 2 back in the day. There's just so much detail poured into each shot, and the camera work is unbelievable. Of course, we've focused heavily on cutscenes thus far, but the in-game models are nearly as impressive. You can stop and admire Sam at any point in the game, or perhaps even in his safe room. Skin, eyes, hair, and even his feet are remarkably detailed for a model used during gameplay, but it's the equipment and clothing that really stand out to me. Look closely at each buckle, strap, and piece of fabric. Every accessory is superbly modeled. So much work has been poured into every inch of every model, and it's just unbelievable to see, even in an era when most games already feature highly detailed models. This is combined with a robust animation system designed to simulate weight and movement across rocky surfaces. As you run, Sam will plant his feet according to the terrain type and incline. When hiking up or down a steep hill, for instance, he shifts his weight into the slope realistically. Gear bounces around on his back, while additional animations such as this are integrated directly into his movement cycle. This ties directly into the traversal system, which I feel is handled in an interesting way. You see, in most open world games, you spend a lot of time moving from point A to point B, but doing so requires little effort from the part of the player. It's usually just a matter of holding forward towards a waypoint. In Death Stranding, however, the terrain itself is a challenge, and extra cargo only serves to increase that challenge. There's actual momentum here. When you're weighed down, you can't just stop on a dime, especially on a steep hill. It's this management of speed, balance, momentum, and positioning that makes the act of hiking across the world more complex and engaging than usual, and the animation plays a huge role in selling this. There are plenty of other foes you'll encounter along the way, and each of them is as well animated and interesting to observe as Sam. Basically, when it comes to character animation and rendering, Death Stranding is a showpiece title, and importantly, it remains responsive during all of this with low input latency on movement, so any delay you do encounter is tied directly to the weight limits or momentum. But while the characters are a highlight indeed, Death Stranding would be nothing without its beautiful world. Death Stranding takes place across the ruined landscape of America, but it's clear from the world design that it was inspired more by the monolithic mountain ranges of Iceland instead. The unique scenery is breathtaking from minute one with an immense sense of scale. Mountains stretch far out into the distance while lakes and rivers snake their way through the terrain. When you first begin your journey, there's a lot to take in, so let's examine some of the details you may experience along the way, starting with the terrain itself. Decima supports GPU-based procedural object placement, something we saw in action at Guerrilla Games. Kojima Productions then has crafted a wide range of rock formations and other assets, and this system is likely used to create a natural procedural landscape using these assets. Every piece of the terrain is supremely detailed, from the snarling rock formations that fill the landscape, to the stone fields at the base of this towering mountain. All are a sight to behold, but it's the smaller stones found alongside rivers and in dry lake beds that impress the most. I'm not sure how these were generated, perhaps a mix of height maps and geometry, but it's clear that the level of detail on display is off the charts. More impressively, object pop-in is kept to a minimum. This field of stones could be very challenging to render to avoid pop-in, but the game does a reasonable job at maintaining the immersion with minimal pop-in and fade-in. The transition between near and far field is handled smoothly. The world, of course, features plenty of other fine details, including grass and plants that appear at certain points, but unlike Horizon, most of this foliage reacts to player collision, so you'll notice plants and blades of grass moving realistically as you make your way through. The terrain then is offset by the sky above, which plays a key role in defining the game's atmosphere. The cloud system available in Decima is a ray-marched volumetric solution crafted for Horizon Zero Dawn, and Death Stranding of course takes full advantage of this. It's designed to be fast but flexible. Variable cloud types and densities are simulated here, while light penetration is present as the clouds absorb and scatter this light. Eventually though, the cloudy skies unleash the rain, or as the game refers to it, timefall, rain which accelerates time. Rain is an area where Kojima-directed titles have always excelled, starting with Metal Gear Solid 2, and the implementation in Death Stranding is top-notch as well. The rain simulation produces thick droplets which react to light and soak everything caught within its grasp. The particle trajectory and thickness varies, while a wet shader is applied to surfaces and materials. As the rain continues, droplets even form on Sam's gear. I mentioned earlier how timefall accelerates time itself, rapidly aging anything it touches. This is where the aforementioned rust mechanic comes into play, not to mention some interesting surface effects such as wrinkling skin, but this also has an impact on plant life. When caught in a timefall storm, plants begin to grow rapidly around the player, only to wilt seconds later. It's a remarkable visual trick that also serves gameplay as it indicates the presence of BTs. But it's the way in which the land and timefall inevitably work together that is perhaps most striking. You'll spend much of your time hiding from BTs, these ghostly beings rooted in the other side. They're beautifully rendered using a GPU particle system, and you'll find them swirling around within the timefall searching for you. When you're caught, a whole slew of impressive effects then begin. First, denizens of the underworld begin to claw at your feet A geometry-based ripple effect is used around these beings as they attempt to pull you under. The area around this then appears dark and withered. Fail to escape and things get especially interesting. Basically, the game floods whatever area you may be in with this thick black tar-like material. It fills the entire space, running down and around the rock formations. It interacts and ripples with players and enemies alike, thanks to mesh deformation and rippling. But as you try to escape, structures begin to emerge around you in real time. Buildings rise up from the muck as the rest of the scenery begins to sink. You can climb and interact with these new buildings, changing the landscape in real time as you play. It's remarkably dynamic. The game is basically able to completely change the play space right before your eyes. As the tar recedes and you make your escape, the remnants of the flood, such as dead fish, remain visible across the world. Beyond the black tar, however, a lot of additional attention has been poured into other fluids and malleable materials. Mud deforms beneath your feet as you trudge through it, with proper trails left in your wake. While based on preview trailers at least, it seems that Decima's snow system is also present and accounted for. The most significant improvement over Horizon, however, stems from water. Large bodies of water are now more visually attractive with improved screen space reflections and superb surface detail, but it's the streams and rivers that really stand out. This is a difficult thing to get right, but basically there's a real sense of current and flow to the water as it cuts through the mountains and washes over stones. And Sam interacts naturally with its surface, leaving behind ripples as you move through it. Another key visual effect then is the use of volumetric lighting and fog, which is used to greatly enhance the mood by filling the world with thick, tangible fog volumes. The way the sun slices across the mountains as you step into its shadow is always striking. Really though, I could go on for much longer covering all the other details I noticed while playing the game, but I think by now you have a fairly good idea of just how impressive an achievement Death Stranding truly is.
See the sunset, the day is ending.
Our time together is nearly at an end, but there are still things to discuss. Performance is certainly worth touching on. Like Horizon, Death Stranding focuses on delivering a stable 30 frames per second frame rate, but there are two different types of scenarios you will encounter: cutscene performance and gameplay performance. While playing the game, I found that the average frame rate was predominantly stable. I only have this example today, but it demonstrates a typical scenario that you might encounter. The frame rate holds mostly steady at 30, but there are minor dips throughout. Vertical sync is thankfully enforced as well, so that means no tearing. When combined with the motion blur, however, the game does manage to feel mostly stable and very smooth during gameplay. Cutscenes, however, are more fascinating, with a lot of impressive effects work, detailed models, and complex sequences to deal with. In this example, you'll notice some very tiny little hitches. But this is just scratching the surface, and we don't have enough time to cover this all in detail. Part 2 will go into greater depth on both PS4 Pro and of course the base PS4, allowing us to see how the two stack up. Before we go though, I wanted to quickly share some final thoughts on the experience. For me, this has been one of the most intriguing games of the year and perhaps of the generation. It's rare that such a large budget can be allocated towards a concept this unique, and I appreciate that it exists. While on the surface, this is very clearly a game focused on transporting cargo from one area to another. It's what happens on that trail that works so well. For me, this is a game that captures the solemn atmosphere of a Team Eco title, or even something like Silent Hill. This mix of horror, quiet exploration, and unique storytelling all works beautifully. I felt that I was done with open world games as of late, but Death Stranding focuses on elements which so many others failed to capitalize on, and it works. Unfortunately, we are out of time. If you enjoyed this video, however, be sure to like and subscribe, ring the notification bell, and follow us over on Twitter. I'll see you next week for part 2.